Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. We were remarking on the great attendance in spite of the fact that for all of you it's probably still morning. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today, I want to talk a little bit about you. I'll tell you a little bit about me, some of the ground rules, and then we'll talk about the session. So by show of hands, how many of you are seniors? Okay, great. Got a 5-year plan? We're talking about a 5-year plan at lunch. You don't need a 5-year plan. It's okay, really. Juniors? Awesome. Sophomores? Freshmen? Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm really grateful that y'all took some time out today to hear this talk. About me, I am a 93 grad of the MBA program. I did my undergraduate work in biology at Cortland State University just up the road. Have been in the workforce for a long time now and took a little bit of a circuitous pathway to my job. We were speaking at lunch about my start, which was in housing and urban development. I worked in the public housing sector for a few years, taught myself a little bit about technology, went on to work for a couple of years in the utility industry for 9 or 10 years to be precise. Went on and did some work in HR and higher ed in the higher ed space, and then made my way to the academic medical center setting. Come on over, there's plenty of room over here. There's plenty of room. Then I don't have my back to anybody. Academic medicine is the confluence of teaching, research, and patient care. So it's a great space to work in. I'm really passionate about it. And have been I worked at Weill Cornell for quite a long time in New York City, and 2 years ago went out and took the job with the big long title out at Penn State Hershey in central Pennsylvania. So the ground rules are that I don't want to stand here and talk the whole time. This will be really much more fun if we can have an exchange. So feel free to raise your hand, interrupt, ask questions, make comments at any time through this conversation. Fair? Fair? Okay, great. So today's talk, what we do that doesn't help, right? How do we get in our own way? We wait to be picked. We're too sensitive to criticism. We take no for an answer. We think having it all means right now. And we only raise our hands halfway. So we're going to go through each one of these things, going to talk about kind of, what this means in my world. Would love to hear about what it might mean in your world. And then we're going to talk about what you should be doing about it. So this might sound like a critique a little bit, and it is. If I were talking about all the things we were all doing right, and I'm sure we're all doing a number of things very, very right, nobody would be here, right? Nobody would be here. So we want to figure out how to fix the things we're not doing quite right. So it's common for women who are trying to advance their careers to sometimes create our own problems, to get in our own way. We don't do it on purpose. Sometimes we have fear and self-doubt. It's normal, right? We have anxiety. We've never done something before. We're graduating from college. We're starting a new job. We're trying something new. We get nervous. That makes us anxious. It's very normal. Our history, maybe we tried something and it didn't go very well, so we don't really want to try that thing again. Society, right? We could spend days in lectures and courses, and people teach about what society does to influence our thinking and how that creates fear and self-doubt. Our parents. Easy to blame our parents. Everybody blames. I still blame my parents, and I'm old. So it's not uncommon for us to create these situations where we say, maybe not me, maybe not now, and we're going to talk about that. So we wait to be picked. What do I mean by this? We wait for assignments, we wait for projects, we wait for promotions. We say, wow, I'm really good. Somebody should be noticing how good I am, and they should pick me, right? They should pick me. They should know I did a great job there. They should know how smart I am. And then what happens? That doesn't happen, and we get mad, right? Does this resonate with anyone, right? I see some folks nodding, right? You should just know how good I am, and you should just pick me, because the alternative is I have to self-promote, and that makes us really uncomfortable. We feel like it's boasting, we feel like it's bragging, we feel like we were taught to be a little bit more humble. I'm not suggesting humility isn't good, it's really great, but it's situational. So instead of volunteering, saying, hey, I know how to do that thing. Can I have a chance? Self-nominating, right? I think I might be able to help on that project. I think that's a skill I have. Can I be involved? And self-promoting. We need to do a little bit of that, and we need to kind of take charge of our own opportunities. We've got to let people know we want to have a shot. So it's really important that we start to learn how to do these things for ourselves. What else do? We are really sensitive when somebody says, that didn't go well, right? Anybody sensitive? I can be sensitive, right? Right? So we think this, they don't like me. It's the first thing we think all the time, right? They don't like me. Guess what? It's not personal. I'm not good enough, right? Again, those feelings of self-doubt. Wow, that didn't go well and I must not be good enough. I knew I shouldn't have said anything. So you raise your hand and you do speak out, and there's an unfavorable reaction, and you say, next time I'm not going to speak. Instead of, wow, they were listening. So somebody gives you some feedback, it means they were listening to you. It means they heard you. They might not have liked what you said, but they were listening. He cared enough to give me some feedback, so next time, maybe I'll get it better. Right? Yeah, she was right about that. So sometimes we say things, we speak out loud, we give our opinion, we sign up for a project, it doesn't go well. Somebody says that didn't go well. You know what? Sometimes they're right. But they cared enough about you to tell you. I get that doesn't always come out quite that way. And again, we're sensitive, so we go, Right? Does this ever happen to anybody? Yeah. Yeah, it's all right. It's all good. We take no for an answer. We propose something and the reaction is unfavorable. Our reaction, so we say, I think that the team ought to go down this pathway, and either the team says no, or the person leading the team says no, or they say, I think you should do it this way, or something happens and we say, boy, that must have been a bad idea, right? That must have been a bad idea. Nobody liked that idea. They don't like me, and back to that, and back to they don't like me. This is not about you. I won't try that again. Okay, right? Fear, self-doubt, kind of self-fulfilling. Instead of, okay, you don't like that idea, or you don't want to go down that path. How about we do it this way? Let's try this way instead of that way. Propose an alternative. Maybe we could try again in 6 months. Maybe now's not the right time. Maybe the reason this isn't working is because of timing, right? The planets aren't aligning, it's raining out. It never rains out. Snows, right? Something. There could be a whole host of reasons that the response to our idea or our project or the opportunity that we wanted is unfavorable, that probably doesn't have to do with us and who we are. Or can we pilot? How about can we pilot? We never say, okay, that might not work, but let's try it in a smaller group. Maybe I could get 2 or 3 volunteers and we could do it this way and let you know how it works out. This notion of work-life balance, and we seem to think we need to have it all, and that means right now, right? People who know me know that this notion of work-life balance is not something that will ever come out of my mouth. What I talk about is work-life integration. So work-life integration, not work-life balance. There's a perception that we need to have it all, and we need to have it all right now. And I'd like somebody to define for me, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, what it all is, right? What is it all that we're all striving to have right now? And balance it, and not make any concessions, right? You guys hear about this at all in your studies and in your lives, and hear your parents talk about these kinds of things, right? We raise our hands halfway. This will be fun in a few minutes. So we're insecure about speaking up, volunteering, making our ambitions known. So what do? We don't. Or we say, can I speak? Can I? Make ourselves small. You know, we don't raise our hands. We sort of say, if I stare at the person long enough, maybe they'll realize I have something very important to say and they'll call on me, right? Right? Anybody wait to be called on? Yes, we all do. We all do. Instead of having confidence that we know what we're talking about, that we know our facts, that the words that are going to come out of our mouth are driven by data, instead of leaning in. So if you haven't read Sheryl Sandberg's book, read it. It's important. Being Big, Amy Cuddy, we're going to talk about her in just a minute. And ensuring our voice is heard. I mean, you know, the likelihood that somebody's going to say, I know you have something very important to say, speak to me, without you giving some body language or some indication that you in fact do, it's a very small likelihood that that's going to happen. Okay. And we wait to be picked. So what are we going to do? So we're back to the beginning. We wait to be picked. What's the solution to waiting to be picked? Raise your hand. Volunteer. And be prepared to be told no. Be prepared to be told no. Because you're not going to get everything you volunteer for either. And that's okay. That's okay. Raise your hand anyway. People aren't going to know that you're interested, that you have the skill, that you're competent, that you have ambition, if you don't let them know that. And then find champions to support your advancement. So I'll tell you a little story about this. I work for a person now who's the chief operating officer of the hospital that I work in. And we got off to a little bit of a rocky start. We have different leadership styles. Our approach to problem solving is really different. And so I went into the relationship probably not with the best headset around our ability to work together. And so I spent a lot of time being mad that he wasn't seeing how smart I was and how much I had to offer. A lot of time. Made me really cranky for months. And I thought, well, I just took this job. I'm going to be really unhappy for a long time if I don't figure out what I need to do differently. So we had this opportunity. He put together this small work group, and it was about how we make decisions about staffing the hospital. And I'm the head of HR, and I wasn't on the work group. I was really mad, really mad. And so I allowed myself to be really mad for about this long. And then I thought, you know what? I have to find out what happened here. So I went to him and I said, you know, it would really help me if I understood why you put this group together and I wasn't on it. I really would like to understand that because I think I can be helpful in this space. I think I know something about human capital management. In fact, that's what you hired me to do. I didn't say that part. I did say the part of, it would help me, I would appreciate it if you could help me understand why you didn't pick me to be part of this group. And he went, huh, you're on the group. And then I couldn't be mad anymore. I was like, wow. Wow, and that worked. Wow, I'm going to use that as a piece of advice to give to people. You have to find people to be your champions. You have to find somebody that you can say, you know, I need help interacting with that person. Can you help me? Can I run this conversation by you? What do you think if I volunteer? How can you help me prepare to volunteer for this assignment, this project, to get picked for this role or this team lead? You need to find people who can be your safe people. So when we're too sensitive to criticism, right? So we all sort of went, yeah, you know, somebody said that didn't go well, your project needs work, or I don't think you got that quite right. We say, you know, first they don't like me, then I'll never try that again. Sometimes in the reverse order, but usually not. So the solution is to find a mentor, and this goes back to finding a champion that can help you advance where you're trying to go. So you need to find somebody that you trust and respect, somebody who has evolved their career in a way that you'd like to emulate. Not necessarily replicate in its entirety. They don't have to be a person who's in your field, but they should be somebody who you say, wow, you know, they've achieved things. I see them lead groups or lead teams or make things happen in our organization. I'd like to be a mentee to that person. Pick somebody who can be honest even when it's difficult, right? I mean, because that's how we're going to learn to take constructive feedback, is by having somebody deliver it who's known to us, who's safe to us, who can really just sort of tell us like it is in a way that's going to help us and not make us feel bad. They're not going to pave the way. They're going to help you pave your own way, right? This isn't somebody who's going to find your next job. They're not going to write your resume. They may critique your resume. They may say, I think you're channeling in the right or wrong direction, but it's not their job to find your job for you, right? So be clear on that, because mentors don't want to find your job for you. They have a job usually already. Who will teach you the business versus the soft skills and learn the business that you're in. So I'm going to talk about a TED Talk in just a second, and the person in the TED Talk, she talks about 3 legs of a stool, and the 3 legs of the stool are, when you want to be a leader, are the ability to lead yourself, the ability to lead others, and this third piece that's actually knowing the business that you're in. And I can't overemphasize this, that it's super critical not to just be a functioner, a functional specialist, right? So I know a lot about HR. I've been in this space for a really long time, but I also know a lot about healthcare. I know a lot about healthcare. I know about our payer mix, and I know about our patient population, and I know about our acuity index, and I know a lot about the business that we're in. What that gives me is credibility, right? So when you raise your hand and you know the business that you're in, the likelihood that something factual and smart will come out of your mouth is a lot greater. And sometimes we find mentors who teach women soft skills, how to not be so sensitive, but they don't teach them business skills. So you want to find a mentor who can help you with both of those things. So this is, you can't see the sun here. So Susan Colantuono, her TEDx was the career advice you probably didn't get. And so if you haven't watched that, it's a good one to watch. You know, just like every TEDx, it only lasts for 13 minutes or so. And she goes through this in great detail and is very artful in her exposition of why this is really important. And you want to have career stage appropriate mentorship, right? So what do I mean by that? When you are emerging workers, which you all are, you need people to help you kind of grow some finesse. You're learning your technical trade. You're learning about what you're going to do, right? 5-year careers, those of you with 5-year careers, do you know what your 5-year career is? Do you know what your field, your industry, your passion is? Right? So these are the folks that are going to help you hone in on what you're going to start out doing. That doesn't mean that's going to be what you're doing forever. I mean, I started out writing grants for public housing, and now I run HR for a hospital. So these are folks that are going to help you kind of get your feet wet, grease the skids, help you learn how to learn a workplace, right? Learn the politics of a workplace, learn how to function and all of that kind of thing. As your career progresses, then you're going to learn the finesse of being a manager and growing into those leadership roles that many of us really are striving to achieve. And then strategic, right? That's when you start to get farther along in your career and you can find somebody that can help you be a strategist for your organization. You can help set the direction your organization is going to go. So those skills are different. I mean, you will hone new and different skills all along your career pathway, and it's really important as you try to define and identify who your mentors are, that they are career stage appropriate. Okay? Does this make sense? We take no for an answer, right? So somebody says, you know, nope, you can't do that, and you go, oh, okay. Oh, Instead of saying, okay, could we do it this way? Is there a compromise? Can I volunteer instead of having the job? Can I lead the team instead of, instead of maybe having the real role yet? Let me demonstrate to you the results I can bring, even though you don't want to quite give me that job yet. Improvise, come up with a compromise, come up with some other way, be creative, think outside the box. All of these kind of cliche things we hear about all the time, do those. When somebody says to you, no, think, well, how can I get this done a different way? You know, strategize, use your mentor, use your colleagues, use your friends to say, you know, they said no, but I really think that I can add some value. I really think that I can do something special here. Help me figure out a way to deliver this message differently or come up with a another way to convince this person that I'm the right one to do this, right? Quite often somebody says no, and we say, okay. And then we get small, and then we feel bad because they don't like us. Having it all right now. So again, I feel pretty passionately that there's no such thing. And so be prepared to make choices. I speak a lot to folks who, especially this blend of higher ed and healthcare that I sit in, we have a lot of emerging scientists, right? So people that come out of their undergraduate and graduate studies that are researchers, right? And research takes a really long time to have an idea and cultivate that idea in a laboratory and get money from the government to sponsor your research and all of these kinds of things. It takes a long time. And so these same women who want to grow their research career are also wanting to have babies and get married and all of these kinds of things, and right? And they're feeling this conflict, and they're saying, well, my employer needs to give me some latitude here, and employers do give a lot of latitude, right? We are suspending tenure track clocks and doing a whole host of things to acknowledge that that women do need time to catch up. But sometimes you have to make some choices. You have to decide, is your career going to compel you now, and family and children and travel and other things later, or vice versa? Only you will know what is right for you right now. And right now will be different in 10 years, and it will be different in 20 years, and it will be different in 30 years. And you will always be making these trade-offs. Always, always, always. Work and family, right? So are you going to have kids, not have kids? Are you going to stay late and finish the project, or are you going to the soccer game? Stuff's going to happen forever. That's just life. Geography and promotion, right? So I can take this great job, but it's in Illinois. Do I want to go to Illinois? Will my family go to Illinois? Can I find a family in Illinois? Is there anything in Illinois? So, these are the kinds of trade-offs. More money, worse job. Better job, less money. So these are all the kinds of things that I think, when I talk about work-life integration, these are the trade-offs that we make all the time. If you want to be a professional woman, or if you don't, then you're sacrificing making deals with yourself, what you do for today versus what you do for tomorrow. And I can also say to you, whatever choices you make, if they're the right choices for you today, they are the right choices, right? There's nobody who's going to tell you that was the wrong choice. You need to make those decisions based on what's important to you today. So we raise our hands halfway. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this. I like this. The solution is to, not do that. Raise your hand all the way. So have confidence. Know your stuff, right? Know the business that you're in. Bring the facts to the table. Make sure that when you speak, you actually do have something to say. I'm not standing here championing for talking for the sake of talking. You need to know that what comes out of your mouth is something important. Right? So come prepared to say something important. Do your homework before you go to a meeting. Do your homework before you go to class. Do your homework before you're going to lead an event, and make sure that you know what's going to come out of your mouth and that you are based and grounded in fact. And when you are, have confidence that you are. Your body language is important. So we're going to finish up talking about this. And so when you're confident, Amy Cuddy does a great TED Talk, Your Body Language Shapes Who You Are. Anybody see this? This is terrific, right? So I'm crediting her because this is great stuff. And I'll get to what she talks about in the next slide, but be ready for debate. Be ready for somebody to challenge you. When you raise your hand and raise it all the way, or lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg says, be prepared for somebody to say, well, why do you know that that's the fact? Or couldn't it be the case that it's Y and not X? And be prepared, because you know the facts, to own your position and own that position. Or say, that's a great point. I'm not sure. I hadn't considered that. It's okay not to know, and you can say you don't know. Just say you don't know with conviction, right? That's a great point. I hadn't considered it. I'm not really sure I can speak to that with facts. And don't be bruised, right? People are going to disagree with what you say all the time. It happens all the time. and then raise your hand again. People will start expecting it. When things come out of your mouth that are smart things that they know are factually based and you've done your homework and you have confidence, then they're going to look to you and they're going to say, what do you have to say about that? You know, I think you have a position. I heard you talk about that in another space. So what do you have to say? So Cuddy talks about low power poses and this business of being, I had a bunch of these slides and I only have a couple of them because we could have gone all day about this. Low power poses, right, this shrinking language and these sorts of things, and we're looking down and we're not making eye contact and we're kind of, you know, doing this and trying to get under the table, and if we could speak from under the table we would, but then we couldn't even raise our hand halfway. And that would be really bad. So she says high power poses, Wonder Woman, right, like this, and stand forward and really, you know, make sure that people know that you're here. Do you know that I'm here? I'm here, right? You know that I'm here. And so expand and make yourself big and make sure that people know. Again, not for the sake of bringing undue and unwanted attention to yourself, but because people need to know you're there. And if you don't let them know you're there, then you're not going to get invited, then you're not going to get selected, then you're not going to get promoted. So I thank you all for being here, and I hope that, that we can have a little bit of a conversation now. You know, the mountains are high, the views are spectacular. For some of you that don't know, I'm a rock climber, so you know, I climb professional rocks, I climb rocks outside in the wilderness, but these are my passions. I feel passionately about the advancement of women, and I thank you for taking time out of your Saturday. Thanks very much. Questions, comments, conversation? Don't be shy. Who's going to raise their hand?
I just heard when you were talking about work and life,
yep.
Balance versus integration.
Yes.
I know like a couple of us are in the job hunting phase of our schooling right
yeah.
now, and in healthcare specifically. And
okay.
so when we're looking at all these websites and looking to apply for jobs, that's one of the things that always is written there, work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was interesting that you proposed integration. I think
yeah.
that's a more honest approach to just talking about that kind of situation, because it isn't a balance, it is more of an integration.
Yeah.
Because if you want to
yeah.
strive for things in all of those,
right.
in all those, you know, fields, I mean, that's important
yeah.
to not just think about balancing it. So I liked that.
Thanks very much for your comment. I appreciate it. What I would say is it's good that you're looking at those things and for those things on the websites, because what you do want to do if you hope to achieve integration is you want to work for an organization that is family friendly, career friendly, where you see things like tenure track pausing if you want to be in research or you want to be an academician, where you see things like lactation space for women, you see things like sponsored daycare, you see things that will lead you to believe quite readily and quite obviously that this is an organization that values the contributions that women bring and that recognizes that women often have different kinds of challenges than men do. And so while I'm firm with integration, I also work really hard to be sure that we are family friendly, that we deliver these kinds of things that are going to allow us to have an inclusive and diverse workforce that's made up of women who have some of the obstacles at least softened for them. On-site daycare, right? Big deal for people. So that you don't have to have that challenge during the workday that says, you know, am I going to have to go home to breastfeed, or am I going to have to, you know, do something different? It's right there. And those are important things as job seekers that you say. If it's important to you to have a family, I would suggest you have plenty of time, by the way. But you want to be looking at that. You know, you want to be looking for that. Please.
How do you think being a woman has influenced your career path and choices?
So I don't think about myself as a woman with a career path. I think about myself as Lisa Abbott, who has ambition and who is going to grow her career. I try not to think about me as a woman versus me as a man. I'm not sure I would do what to do with me as a man. So I think there are certainly things, particularly now as I work in an executive space that's predominantly led by men. So corporations are much more balanced right now, right? You're seeing a lot more equity at the leadership level of corporations because they're farther ahead than academia and healthcare. And I think a lot of that is because when the leaders that exist now in those spaces, in those industries, were training, the balance of students was unequal, right? If you think about the 50s and 60s, we didn't have an equal number of men and women in college, right? Training, particularly in medicine and in higher ed. And so now there's much more of a population, a pool, if you will, of emerging leaders that the percentage of men and women was much, much more balanced. And so I see it more as Lisa Abbott with ambition trying to grow her career, though I am cognizant that I'm predominantly surrounded by men. But that's why I do things like this, because now in your generation, the balance is much more even, and so your opportunities should be, by and large, equal opportunity. Please.
So I've heard a lot of employers and professionals talk about, the qualities that are needed in the work field, and how women need to start changing their behaviors to kind of, to be more masculine in some way. And I'm asking you, where do you draw the line of where, women need to accommodate those traits to where the workplace needs to accommodate us?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a very fine line that I'm kind of still struggling with.
Yeah.
So I know you probably have some answers.
Yeah. So a recommendation I would make is that if you are out there looking for something to read that talks about this, that you read a book called The Athena Doctrine, and the Athena Center at the Barnard Center at Columbia University is an institute that strives for women being leaders. I mean, this is what their research is focused on, and this is what they are proponents of in the world. And the person, John Gershoma, have you read any of his stuff? John Gershoma, the Athena Center, and so his frame of reference is that the leaders that are emerging now have more, and I won't call them male and female because that's not what we're talking about, more feminine attributes and characteristics than men. And so there's a move afoot, and research is starting to substantiate that it's really the more feminine characteristics that are emerging in leaders. Compassion, the desire to reach equitable solutions as opposed to aggression and assertion and these kinds of characteristics that are more connotated toward masculine behaviors, right? And so I would suggest that you need to be true to who you are, and that if we start trying to act like we're men, then we're going to have a real problem because that's not who we are, right? And so again, I would suggest that you figure out what situation you're in and what situation you want to be in, and you figure out what's going to work there versus trying to cultivate a self that is either one way or another way and still not being true to who you are. But read the Athena Doctrine. It'll really speak a lot to this, and John's research does a nice job at exemplifying how this is working in the world. It's great.
How do you suggest finding a mentor, within your field or outside of your field?
So there's lots of things that you can do. You can look around you and say, who do I know that I admire? Who do I know that's grown their career? You can do some research in the field that you're in. You can ask. I mean, I think there's a lot of resources here, and they can perhaps guide you in the right direction. I would suggest that you're prepared to know what you want your mentor to do for you and what you are prepared to do to earn that engagement. So go back to what I said a few slides ago, which is if you want somebody to be your mentor, that doesn't mean they're going to find a job for you. That doesn't mean they're going to write your resume. But it does mean that they're willing to share their career pathway, their career advice. They can critique what you think you might want to do. They can review presentations for you, give you guidance, tell you where they think your limitations are and what you need to do to develop. It's not easy, especially when you're emerging, and so you might need to get your first job and look in that space. But look around for people that you say, wow, I like their style, I like what they're bringing to the table, and approach them with a proposition for them.
Lisa, can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And remember, you own that relationship. It's not the mentor's responsibility to follow up with you. It's not the mentor's responsibility to set the meeting up. You own that, so if you want the mentor to help you, you've got to be in the driver's seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, concerns, problems, ideas, funny stories?
Lisa?
Rose.
For
My pleasure.
Great presentation.
Thanks.
You're very confident. You seem you're very successful.
Thank you.
So I guess I would ask, were you always this way? Or were you so
Man.
maybe you could speak for just a few minutes
Oh.
about your personal story and were there a few aha moments when you practiced one of these examples in particular that you were like, wow, I think this is making a difference.
Thank you for that's a great question, and you put me on the spot. I knew you came here for a reason. No, so have I always been like this? No, definitely not. I mean, I was young once, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way, a lot, and gosh. So I'll tell you a story, and it was a really pivotal time in my career, and it's when I worked at Cornell University before I went to Weill Cornell Medical Center in New York City. So about 10, 12 years ago, I worked for a person who was extremely paternalistic in his management of me, and I already have a dad. So I didn't really want another dad, and I had a really hard time working for him because he was sexist, and he was patronizing, and he did it with every intent of trying to help me, but I found him offensive, and it was really hard. And I remember one day. And I, at the time, had an edgier personality than I do now and was, I think, a little bit less refined, right? Didn't know how to take a deep breath and just let things kind of come out and think about what was going to come out of my mouth, right? Tell you to think about what comes out of your mouth. I know of which I speak. And he said, I did something, and I wasn't building a relationship with somebody he wanted me to build a relationship with. And in retrospect, he was right. I needed to build this relationship, but I couldn't hear him. And I just kept saying, but she's not being, nice to me, and I don't, know how to get along with her and so forth. And he looked at me and he said, and I had come from the utility industry, a corporate organization, much different culture, much different environment, and he said, I know why a girl like you, and yes, he called me a girl, and I was older than 18, and he still called me a girl. I know why a girl like you would have to scratch and claw her way to the top of a corporate organization, but that's not going to play here. And I went, wow, what to do with that? So I just took a deep breath, and I stood up and I said, I think we're done with this conversation, and I left because I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't want to have an argument, and I didn't want to, I didn't know what to do, and so I didn't want it to devolve more than it did. That relationship devolved substantially after that, and I ended up working for somebody else. But I think the message is, I've cultivated responses to things like that. Happens to me, frankly, much less than it did then. But I've seen those kinds of things, and I had a short stint between. I'll tell you just another quick story because I'm just thinking about some of the challenges along the way and how I would handle them differently now than when I was younger. I worked for a short time for an accounting firm in Syracuse that shall remain nameless, and I was a computer network administrator because I had taught myself when I worked at the Housing Authority. I taught myself how to build computers and networks and so forth. Some of you over lunch heard me talking about diskettes and all these kinds of things that don't exist anymore. And the partners were all men, and there were a lot of associates, a mixed bag of men and women. So accountants and actuaries, right? It's an accounting firm, so lots of young grads like yourselves. And so I was not a lot older than them, but older than them a little bit. And so I was responsible for running the cables in the ceiling and getting under the desks and hooking things up and all this kind of stuff. So I showed up at my first day of work, super excited to work there. And one of the women, who was one of the senior women, kind of administrative assistants, said to me, "Did Kenny tell you the dress code?" And I said, "No, Kenny didn't tell me the dress code." So I had pants on, I had a pantsuit on. And she said, "Women in this firm don't wear pants." So this was, lest you think I'm 100 with, work done or something, this was in the late 90s. And so I went, wow. She said, is that going to be a problem? I said, sure is. And it was a problem every single day because I wore pants every single day and I got in trouble every single day. I lasted at that job 3 months and that was it. And so, what would I do differently now? I'd probably ask if there's a dress code, every day. And so I got called in, by the senior partners and they said, and again, kind of sexism wasn't dead there either. They said to me, you look so much prettier in dresses. You're upsetting the girls. Can't you just get along? And I said, in fact, I can't. I just can't. And so sometimes you have to move out to move on, and that was an example. But I learned a lot through those situations, right? I learned about what was important to me, what kind of environment I wanted to work in, how I could have a response to a comment I wasn't anticipating, right? That's an important skill to build up, is when somebody says something to you, you're going, you want something to come out, and so you should practice what that might be. So I had a number of those kinds of things, but those are two that stood out to me as sort of really impactful, and I made a lot of decisions on the basis of those interactions after they happened. Anything else I can share? Anything else you want me to know about you? Alrighty then. Oh?
Yeah, have your parents ever been non-supportive of kind of your stubbornness or kind of your way of viewing the work field or kind of what you wanted to do? I don't know, maybe even you're kind of a generation above us, so parents are kind of expecting the girl to do something a certain way. Now I know things are still changing.
Yeah.
But I don't know, the mentality is still present, so I was just wondering how you're...
So I'll answer a question you didn't ask me, which is I have a grandfather who's 96 years old. I love my grandpa's the most awesome guy in the whole world. He drove a beer truck in Manhattan. That's what he did for a living. He was a driver his whole life. He drove a beer truck and then he drove a school bus. And so he's the kind of guy that struggles with what I do. My parents, more progressive, and I think they figured out once I moved out, their say was over. But Grandpa's still struggling. My grandfather lives by himself. He's completely independent. He, very engaging and smart and fun guy to talk to. But he'll say, "It's not safe where you're going. Don't go there." When I moved to Manhattan, I thought the man was going to have a stroke. But he's supportive in a grandpa kind of I have to worry about you, otherwise who will kind of way. So I've never had challenges with my family really not being supportive. He's several generations ahead of me, so his frame of reference is much different. But he is growing to accept this is who I am. Please.
Do you have any thoughts on women in the international workforce? Because I know different countries have different values, and for example, in France, their view of the family is a very traditional, they value the traditional framework of a family. And so that's just one example. I was wondering if you had any thoughts.
I do. So when I worked for Weill Cornell, the medical center in New York City, we have a regional campus, a regional medical school in Doha, Qatar. So in the Middle East. For those of you who don't know, it's off the coast of Saudi Arabia. And I had the opportunity to travel there about 10 times. And it's really important. My concentration when I was working on my MBA was in international business, and so I think that it's really important if you want to work internationally or even if you want to travel internationally, know where you're going and know what the values and the norms and the culture are where you're going, because you are a guest in that country. And so you're allowed to have opinions and take positions and so forth, but you are a guest. And it's your responsibility to go prepared to know that women need to be covered, that there's a different, that there's just a different gender situation that exists in France, a different familial situation, in a lot of Europe, kind of a different work-life integration situation, right? And so I think my advice or my reaction to that is know where you're going and know what it means to be there, because you're the guest. Please.
What was your experience like in Qatar? It sounds really interesting.
It was great. It was really hard for me to be there because I'm who I am. But it was really important learning for me. It was really important for me to try to understand the religious values of the country, to understand why women and men had different, there were different expectations about being able to work and being able to be out and being able to do things with the freedom that we enjoy in this country. It's a place I don't think I could conceive of living because people don't have equal rights there. But I learned a lot, and I grew to appreciate the cultural influence. And the goal of having established a medical school there was to train Qatari doctors to stay in that region, because it's, in spite of its affluence, so Qatar is per capita, at least it was a couple years ago, may still be, per capita the wealthiest nation in the world. Very unhealthy, right? Very unhealthy population, and so they're trying to really invest in the healthcare and education. They set up a place called Education City, which are prominent U.S. Universities. So Cornell was there with their medical school, George Washington University, Texas A&M, a whole bunch of schools with their specialty teaching to invest in the education, and they're also investing in the healthcare of the country. So it was a fabulous experience that I was really grateful to have had. Anything else? Thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you.